After almost 16 years at the helm of Europe's largest economy, Angela Merkel will step down as Germany's Chancellor after federal elections on September the 26th. But who will succeed her and what kind of coalition will take office? We will discuss all of that with Dr. Jens Bastian. Dr. Bastian, thank you very much for having this discussion with us and helping us understand what is going to happen in these difficult, I dare say, elections in Germany this year.
Well, thank you for having me. I hope I can deliver to give you an understanding.
Well, we can definitely say that the race for the Bundestag is proving dramatic, I dare say. Since May, three parties have led the polls. It's Mrs. Merkel's center-right Christian Democrats, most recently the center-left Social Democrats, and also we have the Green Party. What are your predictions, Dr. Bastian, and in your experience, have you seen elections like that in Germany before Mrs. Merkel?
There are indeed very interesting twists and turns regarding this forthcoming general election in Germany. And as you have just suggested, one of these twists and turns is that the Social Democrats, the SPD as they are abbreviated in Germany, they were written off in early 2021. And they have now, according to almost every poll that is being published, they have overtaken the conservative Christian Democrats, the CDU, for the first time. And this is taking place for the first time in over a decade. And if these polls are correct, and I would still caution not to read too much into the polls, then this change, which party takes first place, would constitute a watershed moment in German electoral politics. It's unprecedented, and in particular, the CDU is unprepared for actually losing these elections. So in a word, one way or the other, the election outcome will redraw the contours of Germany's political typography in the coming years.
Well, you said something very interesting, that CDU is unprepared to lose the elections. Why is that, Dr. Bastian? And can I ask you also something else about CDU? Will it be Armin Laschet? Is Armin Laschet to blame, and will it be to blame for the fall of Merkel's CDU if in the elections they lose?
It's a combination of who's to blame and what are the reasons for this rather dramatic decline in the opinion polls. I would start by arguing that the CDU made a cardinal mistake with regard to a belatedly organized and badly managed electoral campaign. There was, for the rank and file of the CDU, a very long uncertainty who would actually be their candidate. He was only nominated, Mr. Laschet, in April of this year. Contrast that with the SPD. The Social Democrats nominated their lead candidate, Olaf Scholz, in August 2020, so almost 9 months earlier. Hence, the CDU rank and file must organize a campaign, must try and put up campaign posters with a candidate that many of them only knew at the last moment. And with regard to not being prepared for electoral defeat, that is an experience if you are in power since 16 years. Complacency has developed inside the ranks of the CDU. And these Christian Democrats have relied, in my view, far too long on Angela Merkel, their chancellor. But the problem is now that Mrs. Merkel is not on the ballot anymore. Hence, the contrast couldn't be any bigger. The current chancellor remains popular within her party, while the CDU is crashing in the latest opinion polls.
Well, let's talk a little bit about SPD and Olaf Scholz. Regarding Olaf Scholz, do you believe that if SPD wins, it will be also his personal win? I mean, people play so much a role in German politics. We saw that they played a huge role regarding Angela Merkel, because we all felt that CDU was in the government for so many years because of Angela Merkel. So do Germans vote for persons and not for their parties, as maybe they used to in the years before Angela Merkel?
You're right in that assessment. It is a highly personalized electoral campaign. And in the past elections, this has always helped the Christian Democrats because of Mrs. Merkel. And this time the table is turning. It is in fact helping the Social Democrats in the opinion polls. Olaf Scholz's rise in these opinion polls is translating, is helping the party in voter preferences. That is an important connection that the SPD did not manage in the past years. They may have had a good candidate, but it never translated into votes for the party. Today, the opinion polls suggest, an anecdotal evidence that I have as a German who frequently is in Germany, that the SPD is starting again to be associated with policy competence in certain areas, like, for example, social justice, a higher minimum wage demand, stable pensions, affordable housing, fiscal support during the COVID-19 pandemic. These are all issues that are associated with a Minister of Finance. And here, Mr. Scholz, as Angela Merkel's finance minister, it helps him that he can project competence and authority in being finance minister. I also think that, and one should not ignore the fact that Mr. Scholz, despite his success, he has actually also been successful in papering over some of his ministry's responsibility in a number of scandals that have taken place under his watch. For example, the collapse of the Wirecard, a financial transaction company. It is the biggest fraud case in Germany's history, or the so-called Cum-Ex disaster, which highlighted fake reimbursements of capital gains taxes from share transactions. These are scandals that took place while Mr. Scholz was, as some critically see it, sleeping at the wheels of the finance ministry. But at the end of the day, I would argue that something else for the SPD is also important. For the first time, they are running since a decade, they are running a campaign which is actually characterized by message discipline. And they have been able to maintain a truce between different political currents, centrists and more left-wing parts of the party, after years of internecine party conflicts. Today, the SPD rather projects an element of stability, competence, and cohesion. And this is precisely not what you can say about the electoral campaign of the CDU.
Well, let's talk now a little bit about another protagonist of this election campaign, and I'm talking about the Progressive Green Party. Do you believe that concerns over climate change we saw would happen in Germany with the floods will help the Green Party, and will help the Green Party so much that maybe it will be the first party in these elections?
This is how it looked like at the beginning of the year. The Green Party has made remarkable progress in terms of popularity across different segments, constituencies of German society. that has a lot to do with the changes in personnel, in perception of the Green Party itself, but also changes that are taking place in Germany with regard to, for example, demography, greater diversity, many more women running as party candidates, not only for the Green Party, for parliament. Hence, in many ways, the Green Party reflects changes that are taking place in Germany. For example, I mentioned the demographics. The lead candidate of the Green Party, who for the first time actually nominated a chancellor candidate, is Mrs. Annalena Baerbock. She's 40 years old. That means she's 20 years younger than the two other competitors, Mr. Laschet and Mr. Scholz, who are both over 60. It's the first time that the Greens have nominated somebody to run for Germany's highest executive office. But they are doing this with a candidate who has actually never held a ministerial position in Germany. She has never led a municipality as a mayor. She has never worked in an administration of, for example, a state utility or worked in a publicly traded company. She's the mother of two small children, and she's the member of the Bundestag, the German parliament, federal parliament, since 8 years. So you see that it's a complete different personality, professional background, and political outlook. And I think this reflects Germany in terms of who now is running for office. Many of the generation of, I would call it the reunification decades from 1990 and later, they are now gradually leaving office, and a new generation of younger, much more female politicians seeking office, and this is best reflected in Mrs. Annalena Baerbock.
Well, Germany is likely to end up with a three-way coalition, and that, Dr. Bastian, is a rarity at national level. How do you believe this kind of coalition will work? Will it be successful? Can it work to have three parties in the government?
It's definitely unprecedented, and it is also, in my view, again, a reflection of change taking place at the federal level of German politics, because we have three-party coalitions in many different configurations already at different regional levels of Germany. And since no German party is currently polling above 25%, and that in itself is an unprecedented development in post-war German politics, you will need at least three parties to join ranks and to form such a coalition. And I would argue that Germany is becoming much more like many other European countries who have government coalitions that have at least three political parties. Can it work? We will have to see in practice. I think that the experience that the CDU, the SPD, and the Greens have organized in the course of the past years at the regional level with such three-party configurations will help them. I also think that there is a very strong tiredness among the German electorate for so-called grand coalitions between two parties, which traditionally involved the CDU and the SPD. Not only do they mathematically now not have the numbers anymore to form such coalitions, but I also think that politically, this kind of a configuration has run its course. Voters are prepared to experiment and to give a three-party coalition the credit of the doubt at present.
Well, we heard very recently Angela Merkel saying that she regretted the way that she behaved towards the Greek people in the big crisis of 2010, Dr. Bastian, 2009, 2010. And regarding Greece, do you think that things will change in German politics towards Greece and towards fiscal policy in general in the Eurozone if SPD and the Green Party and maybe also the Liberal Party will be in the government? We will see a change in the economy and in the way that they will behave towards and Greece and in the Eurozone.
First, let's look again at the statement from Mrs. Merkel. I respect her honesty in saying that this was the most difficult moment and that she also has regrets about some of the demands that she herself even made and pushed vis-à-vis Greece. But in my view, this comes 10 years too late. I would have welcomed such a statement from her much earlier, and in particular vis-à-vis Athens if she had traveled there. With regard to how heartfelt it is, one must bear in mind the CDU right now, as I have just mentioned, is in decline, catastrophic decline with regard to opinion polls. So they're trying to mobilize also certain stereotypes and ressentiment. And I have noted in the past days that while Mrs. Merkel is in a way apologizing towards Greece, others inside the CDU are reminding the electorate what it would mean if a social democratic chancellor were to lead German politics, including with references to what, in the view of the CDU, would mean unreliability regarding fiscal policy. And the underlying message here is, don't trust the Social Democrats with money. And you can, in a way, replace their certain words with Greece. So I am not fully convinced that the CDU and Mrs. Merkel are singing from the same hymn sheet when they are looking at Greece.
Well, and another questions that the Greek public often thinks and asks itself, will the politics towards Turkey change? We know that Turkey, because of the German-Turkish population in Germany, play a big role. Do you believe that if there is a change in the government and Olaf Scholz and SPD is the first party and they govern Germany, there will be a change towards Turkey? We have also heard Mrs. Baerbock and the Green Party saying that before they went so well in the polls, but that they would favor to stop selling arms to Turkey because of the situation in the Eastern Mediterranean. What's your opinion on that, Dr. Bastian?
I think that depending on who would take the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we can identify two countries where change is necessary, not only in rhetoric, but also in substance, and that concerns Turkey and China. And I think that in particular, with regard to the Green Party, but also parts of the Social Democrats, we can expect a very different approach there. I think with regard to Turkey, you are right to highlight the export of submarines to Turkey from Germany. The Green Party position here is to stop this export during an autocratic presidency of Erdogan in Turkey. And I think that they will fight tooth and nail to have that included in any kind of coalition agreement with the Social Democrats and another third party that we do not know yet who it could be. I also think that China will be another major foreign policy issue that will in many ways characterize coalition negotiations, how German politics will address the economic interdependence of China and Germany, but also how in the future, in a way, German politics will try and move away from, in my view, a far too accommodating embrace of China, in particular with regard to German exports to China, while being rather muted as regards policy issues like human rights violations against Uyghur Muslims in Western China, or the situation in Hong Kong, or the manner in which so-called wolf warrior diplomats in Berlin are sometimes addressing publicly German policy positions. I think this kind of accommodating policy approach vis-à-vis China, we can expect, or we should prepare that this is going to change course with a new three-party coalition.
Dr. Bastian, I thank you very much for this discussion. Thank you.
I thank you for the opportunity. Let's see how the results then pan out.
And then we'll have another talk about the results and what government we will see in Germany. Thank you, Dr. Bastian.
I thank you.